Hey,
Okay.
hello, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there. This is panel number 3. We've got a Rock'em Sock'em panel to be able to share with you. But as Barry said, I am also one of the more senior members of the Alternative Fuel Clean Cities organization. And back in, I think, 96, when New Jersey became a Clean Cities Coalition, we were known at the time the North Jersey Clean Cities Coalition. And there weren't too many counties that were active in the North Jersey, maybe 5 or 6, but we have since grown into the entire state. So very proud to be a member of the New Jersey Clean Cities board. And when Chuck asked me to be a moderator, my response was, I think you better pick somebody else, Chuck. I'm not the best with knowing what it is with hydrogen, but I'm very interested in alternative fuels, and I'll do my best, but you got to back me up with a really, really good panel. So I think we have such a thing. But before I start, somebody used the words earlier, your hydrogen IQ. And then I thought about it and I'm like, what the heck? I don't really have much of a hydrogen IQ. So it didn't take long to find out a few things that would be of interest to share. And one of which is that the word hydrogen, that comes from the Greek word meaning water creator. That's a good one, I thought. Furthermore, that 20% of global carbon emissions could be abated by hydrogen. That's another good one. And that the more we rely on hydrogen, the more we can get to a zero emission transportation field. And I'm really happy to be part of it. So without further ado, our first speaker is Bill Zobel. And known Bill for a very long time. And Bill
Hey, Brian, this is Chuck. Before Bill starts, if I could just interrupt here. Assemblyman Conaway asked the question that I think, Roy, if you're still on, would be appropriate for you to answer. And that is, what does CHART do with the carbon extracted during the making of blue hydrogen?
So that's a great question. Thank you, Chuck. Typically, it's a carbon dioxide process where the CO2 is removed as a liquid or a solid and taken away and used for environmentally friendly means.
Thank you, Roy. Assemblyman, we could follow up if you need more detail on that.
all right.
Yeah, they can reach out to me direct, and I can put them in touch with our carbon capture folks to get to talk more technically sound about that process.
Okay, should we carry on, Chuck? I guess we'll
Let's do it. Thank you.
hand the mic over to Bill. If you would introduce yourself, Bill.
Very good. Good morning. Thanks everyone for having me. I appreciate it. As Brian said, I hope everybody's hydrogen IQ goes up a little bit today after all the panels. Certainly a lot of good information has been presented so far. Nicholas, you're going to run the deck. You want to just advance the next slide, please? Thank you. Again, I'm Bill Zobel. I'm the Executive Director of the California Hydrogen Business Council. The California Hydrogen Business Council has over 120 members, and we range from global leaders in the industry all the way to the smallest startups looking to bring new technology into the hydrogen space. Feel free to check us out on our website. I've got some information, contact information at the end of the presentation that you can feel free to look at your leisure. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I've been asked today to provide a sort of a perspective from California. We've been very engaged in the hydrogen space for a long time now. We've got quite a bit of experience there, and provide some information or share some information on where folks in New Jersey could potentially take your hydrogen studies or hydrogen policies to help advance the industry within the state of New Jersey. So a couple of areas that we focus on: transportation, gas and electric market design, and then statewide decarbonization planning are all areas where folks in this industry could participate with policymakers to help move this industry forward. Let's go to the next slide, please, Nicholas. Thank you. So as we've talked about today from several excellent speakers, hydrogen is a very versatile energy carrier. A lot of folks refer to it as an energy vector that can be applied to a variety of different segments of the industry to help decarbonize those sectors and lower emissions and improve air quality. This is a chart from the Hydrogen Council study that was done back in 2020, and it shows the various areas and various sub-segments of these markets where hydrogen can be applied quite effectively. And I won't go into detail on several of these today. They've been covered by other speakers, but just know that hydrogen as an energy vector can be applied broadly in the economy, which is very exciting at this point. Let's move to the next slide, please. So a little bit about California and what we're doing. The top of this timeline represents at a very high level what the state's trying to accomplish. California has set very aggressive decarbonization goals for the state. All the way over to the right, you can see the executive order by Governor Brown issued in 2018 set a carbon neutrality date for the state by 2045. So everything in the state is geared around trying to achieve that carbon neutrality goal across all sectors of the economy. A couple of sectors that I will touch on today, I'm going to touch a bit on the power sector. I'm going to touch a bit on the gas sector. I won't touch too much on transportation. The other speakers have already touched on that. But we do have very aggressive goals across the spectrum, much like New Jersey with a renewable portfolio standard. Our goal is to achieve 100% renewable power in that sector by 2045, and we've got a 60% goal by 2030. So we're aggressively moving down this path to get to 100% renewable power with a midterm goal of 60% by 2030. So a lot to be done there, and a lot of applications for hydrogen. On the transportation side, the governor, in case you haven't heard, had set a goal here recently with an executive order to ban the sale of internal combustion cars in the state by 2035 and move to a zero emission platform, and medium and heavy duty trucks by 2045 where feasible. Let's go to the next slide, please. So in terms of making green hydrogen affordable, this is a slide that was pulled together by the APEP program, Advanced Power Energy Research Program at UC Irvine. This was done for the California Energy Commission to demonstrate where the cost bands might be for various forms of green hydrogen in terms of what they could be produced for. So you can see there are three different brands of renewable hydrogen that have been listed here. The one on top, the one that's been talked about the most today, electrolytic hydrogen. Relatively high cost today, but there's a lot of potential to reduce that cost down to something that's much more cost effective over time with the right policies. Natural gas and with carbon capture and storage is the band in green. You can see a very low cost option today for green or renewable scale hydrogen. Those costs don't expect to decline much over time, but can still be very competitive with other technologies. And then thermochemical conversion, which is where they think a lot of research can still be done to lower those costs, also presents an interesting and cost-effective option for green hydrogen over time. Next slide, please. So this was the high case done by the same group in terms of integration of renewable hydrogen into California and looking at the demand curve in 2050. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the various segments, but you can see here that over time, as the cost of that hydrogen comes down, you can see the pickup in some of the sectors that can be applied across the board, not just in California, but in other states, including New Jersey. So vehicles, both heavy duty, light duty, heat and process for industrial equipment, generation and storage, refining and ammonia are just some of the areas that were covered in this study. You can see it gets up, the demand curve gets up pretty high to about 4 trillion kilograms of renewable hydrogen per year. Next slide, please. So we did have a projection or a presentation earlier by South Jersey Gas. I thought that was very good, and I wanted to bring a little bit of gas perspective into this discussion from California. So this study's a bit dated, but it does show early on what the regulators saw would be a potential mix for hydrogen in the state's pipeline distribution system by 2045. So you can see in 2018, which is much like it is today, the natural gas mix in California is dominated by natural gas. And over time, through 2045, it looks to pick up to about a 28% hydrogen mix in that gas supply by the 2045 timeframe. Next slide, please. So the bottom line for everyone on this call and folks that are interested in helping to promote hydrogen technologies here in New Jersey would be to take a look from a policy perspective on what can be done at the state level to help move these programs forward. So a couple of suggestions. One is for the state to develop a high-level strategy. We've seen these be very effective in Europe. California is in the process of developing our high-level strategy now in what we call a scoping plan. What these help do is align resources across the state to help achieve the objectives that will be put forward within those plans. These also help provide investor certainty and show folks that are looking to invest in this market that the state's serious about it and trying to move forward. We also would recommend that the state take a fuel neutral approach. And we suggest an objective approach in that regard, which we call using a carbon intensity metric to go forward. And what carbon intensity is, for those that are not familiar with it, is it's a measure of the carbon intensity of, in this case, hydrogen, relative to any other energy source that might participate in the same market. For example, the carbon intensity score in grams per megajoule for diesel fuel is about 100. The carbon intensity for hydrogen produced from steam methane reforming using a landfill biogas feedstock is somewhere in the 70s. So you can take any hydrogen product, whether it's produced from fossil sources, renewable sources, or anything else, and fit it into a carbon intensity score or matrix that shows how it fits into any regulatory construct. So we really like the carbon intensity approach here in California, and it's starting to pick up some steam. More specifically, in terms of the power markets, we see renewable hydrogen as a very effective and eligible RPS resource. We would suggest that New Jersey also consider using renewable hydrogen or green hydrogen as an RPS eligible resource and have it qualify. Long duration energy storage requirements that can be set by the state for hydrogen to help improve the resiliency of the electric system over time. Using green electrolytic hydrogen, especially long duration storage, can be quite applicable and present opportunities for growth in this market. In terms of lowering the cost of a green hydrogen, Genevieve touched on it earlier, getting access to low cost power to produce that hydrogen or access to the wholesale markets, if you will, to produce electrolytic hydrogen will really bring down that cost very quickly and allow for that product to be produced cost effectively much sooner than it would otherwise. And then finally, including green electrolytic hydrogen or green hydrogen into resource planning, the state's electric reliability requirements, and enabling these same wholesale producers to provide grid support from their projects will help to offset some of the costs and bring additional revenue to the state. Lastly, on the pipeline distribution markets, some areas there that we would suggest to help get the market kickstarted would be for the state to establish a renewable gas blending standard. This is something that we've been working on in California for some time. There's still research that needs to be done in terms of what's a safe level to do that, how far can we take it, so on and so forth. But getting a renewable blending standard for the New Jersey gas system would certainly help promote development and supply. Finally, we would encourage the state to allow the gas utilities to invest in infrastructure. This is something that I know a lot of states are looking at. California is looking at it. In particular, investments in common carrier systems that can serve large hubs of industrial customers with a dedicated pipeline. Those would be ideal opportune investments for gas utilities. So these are just some suggestions for policymakers and you all here on the webinar today in terms of where you could take things for hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Very good. Question, if I may?
Sure.
What do you, if I may, what do you see the costs coming down as it relates to the power and gas markets contributing to that downward cost projection?
So a couple things need to happen to start bringing that cost down. Number one, we need to have some scale, right? The way costs come down as you start to develop scale, there's competition among suppliers. And what you'll start to see is as there's additional competition, there's additional innovation, the cost of the product will come down with increasing scale. The way to get to scale, in my humble opinion, is to get the utilities engaged in the market early and often and have them start driving that scale with injection standards for renewable gas, in particular hydrogen, and building hydrogen into some of the reliability and long duration storage requirements for the state.
Nice. And one other thing, can you share what policies are being advocated with California policymakers?
All the ones I listed on that previous slide. So we're pushing all of those policies in California to try to drive some scale and investor confidence into that market.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along, we've got Charlie Myers, who's coming to us from Massachusetts. And Charlie is the president of the Massachusetts Hydrogen Coalition. So Charlie, please take it from here.
Brian, thank you very much on that. I appreciate it. And I want to thank Chuck and Joanne for putting on this excellent activity this afternoon. Next slide. You know, as we talk about hydrogen and we talk about the application and bringing the medium and heavy duty truck marketplace into the game, we have to remember one of the reasons we're here is because we want to reduce the emissions impact on the environmental justice communities. And this is just a list of items that the states have recognized. You know, COVID has certainly made us feel more mortal as we go through our own lives on that. And driving heavy duty and medium duty trucks and other vehicles in the environmental justice and other communities does have an impact. In New Jersey, if we went to zero emission for this category of product, we would save 636 deaths on that from cardiovascular and respiratory illness. The other three categories that really represent significant impact would be work absences would be avoided. There could be millions of dollars of savings in health benefits, and certainly there would be new jobs created to support the vehicles and the associated infrastructure that comes along with it. Next slide. As we look at the applications, though, it's not just the emissions, it's not just the health impact, but it's the use case. And the use case derives what the technology is that would be best served to bring zero emission into the marketplace. So for heavy duty trucks, there are 5 things that users really consider, one of which it's got to be zero emission, no question. But the driving range has to be typical of what the users are experiencing now. They've got fleets of trucks, they have daily routes, and they need a technology that allows them to continue operating in the way that they are today, or they were looking at additional trucks, or actually more vehicle miles traveled in some cases. The user experience and the time to refuel are important in terms of the refueling effort. You know, is this something that the drivers can do? Is the time comparable? The metric for the forklift marketplace was that using fuel cell forklift trucks, the hydrogen refueling actually took less time than recharging the batteries and allowed the forklifts to run for a longer period of time. So there was an actual business case for the user market to make the conversion. Another part of it is the infrastructure. What needs to be brought to the site? Is it power lines? Is it hydrogen stations? Is it scalable? Can it fit the need of not only the area, but the county and the region that it will be located? Last, what's the payload benefit, plus or minus? If we go to one technology versus another, will it cause us to drop payload, which drops revenue dollars that the user might have? Next. Looking at the port and truck marketplace, we have to know what's out there today. And so on the left-hand side, those are examples of container equipment that people can actually get fuel cell power for today on it. So whether it's a reach stacker or a container handler or a rubber tire gantry crane, they all exist with fuel cell technology today. The same for the yard dogs that are moving the containers around the port area. But yard dogs are also used at distribution centers of high volume. So both opportunities exist for that. And on the right, there are a variety of heavy duty trucks that are actually available for people to work with. Nikola is coming to the market. Hyzon is right around the corner. Hyundai is there today, and the Toyota Kenworth combination is there today. And then there's the hydrogen infrastructure, which is in the bottom left. On the very left-hand side of that, you can see a picture of a recently opened Shell station targeted to support Class 8 trucks. Notice it's a station big enough that multiple trucks can refuel at the same time. And then there's the Air Liquide station inside the Toyota operations at the Port of Long Beach. And there's a Nikola station in Arizona right now. So the infrastructure does exist. It needs to be improved. It needs to be refined. NREL, as we learned earlier, is actually working on getting a higher flow rate through it. But the basics are there today. Next. And so New Jersey, what I've tried to do here is to show you where the actual environmental justice communities are. This particular map is from the EPA screening tool, and it covers the PM 2.5, so the particle 2.5 size, and shows by color coding where along in New Jersey is the environmental justice impact of that. And it basically follows the I-95 corridor, the Route 1 corridor going up and down. But then what I wanted to do is I wanted to pick 3 different warehouse operations that are actually using fuel cell powered forklift trucks, which means, as on the bottom set of pictures, you can see in Logan Township, there is a good sized distribution center, and you can look at it on Google Earth, and you can look down and you can actually see the liquid hydrogen system that is supporting the fuel cells inside that operation. There's another one of a similar size and nature up in Cranberry, New Jersey, about the middle of the state. And if you look at that picture, you can notice how many trailers are actually there. That's a really good sized distribution center operation. And then in the top is another picture, that's Perth Amboy. So now we're getting closer into the port areas. And my apologies, what I wanted to show on this on the right, and the key is missing, but the second row down in the emission reduction is CO. So you can see the CO savings in pounds. And then the last two, the next to the last is PM 2.5 and then PM 10. So each of those distribution centers has a number of heavy duty trucks that go in and out of it. Those heavy duty trucks, you can forecast the number of by going to the International Transportation Engineer, ITE, and look up based on square footage, and it will tell you how many trips they will do per day out of that average distribution center, and then use that to forecast things. So just by converting to heavy duty trucks at those locations, New Jersey could realize savings where those trucks are driven. The distribution center may not be in an EJ community, but the trucks that leave or come to the distribution center are the platforms that go out into the environmental justice community. Next slide. Now, if we look at the state again, and we take that same PM 2.5 map, there are some additional locations that represent hydrogen demand on it, one of which is the port infrastructure up in Newark and Elizabeth. And that's where the container handlers, the reach stackers, and the drayage trucks could all be used. If you counted up all the equipment and looked at the amount of hydrogen they would use per day, the demand would be about 22,000 kilograms of hydrogen per day, and you can see the environmental justice area around it. The next would be the airport. Newark International Airport has ground support equipment. Now, we're not talking about the jets, that would be to come. We're not talking about the regional airport, that's a future activity. But there exists today ground support equipment, the pushback tractors, the baggage belt loaders, and things like that. That represents around 5,000 kilograms a day just at Newark International Airport. Now, if you take the entire state and you matrixed out the square footage of warehouse and distribution center in the state, you would end up looking at a demand of 275,000 kilograms of hydrogen per day for the heavy duty trucks that just support the distribution centers and the Port of Newark and Elizabeth. That all could be very easily generated from the offshore wind activities, from the solar activities, and that solves your renewable problem. You could put those heavy duty truck stations. You could put 5 of them, you could put 10 of them. That's probably the next step to map out New Jersey, but to say, where could I put the heavy duty truck locations that would support that 275,000 kilograms? All total, 2,125 tons of CO would be avoided if all of those vehicles were converted to hydrogen fuel cells. 180 tons a year of particulate 2.5 would be saved, and 195 tons per year of PM10. So it's all very doable, very possible, and there's a health savings and an ability to keep the same performance metrics that businesses are used to in the way they operate today. Next slide. And I want to thank you very much. My contact information is here. Brian, back to you.
Well, you know what, Charlie, we do have a couple of questions, and one of which is from Ron Galmy. Ron, could you unmute yourself and ask the question to Charlie, please? And furthermore, we have another question from Pete Morano, our friend from South Jersey Gas. So Pete, if you can't mute, I'll ask the question for you. Are the present hydrogen fueling stations presently being used to fuel forklifts in the area in the 3 distribution centers in New Jersey?
Yes, those stations, I picked those distribution centers. They all have hydrogen. They all have fuel cell forklift trucks indoors. There are a group of additional distribution centers that are located up in the Newark area. I didn't show everyone on the map, but there are some grocery distribution centers that are using fuel cell powered forklift trucks with hydrogen. There are cold storage companies up in northern New Jersey using fuel cell powered forklift trucks with hydrogen on the site.
Very good. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much, Charlie. Your statistics were very interesting. That I enjoyed seeing myself. So moving further along, thanks again. We got Mike Strizki. Mike, are you ready to jump in here? Mike is the executive director of the New Jersey Hydrogen House Project. So take it away, Mike.
Okay. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, let me get my video on here. Okay. So I've lived in the nation's first solar hydrogen home now for the last 19 years. In that time, we've created a whole number of advances in advancing the hydrogen house to where it is today. So basically, we use electrolysis here. We use solar. We used wind power, all to combine to give us a system that has been reliable, that has survived Hurricane Sandy and a number of winter storms. We have a negative carbon footprint in the fact that we produce oxygen in addition to using no fossil fuel. Next slide, please. Okay, so you see the layout of the hydrogen house here in the slide to the left. So we have this was done in 2006. We have originally 10 kilowatts worth of solar. Now we have 26. We have a small battery bank, which provides about 1.5 days worth of storage. And we have 12 hydrogen propane/hydrogen tanks that store about a half a year's worth of hydrogen for the home. We have a proton electrolyzer, which you can see the specifications to the right, which has been in use here, original piece of equipment since 2004. And we have a plug power fuel cell, 5 kilowatt, that drives the system. This system's been fairly reliable. I travel a lot to California, and the system runs all by itself. As time has gone on, we've converted everything in the house from cooking gas, heating gas. I fuel 3 Toyota Mirais from my house. And basically everything here, snowmobiles, lawnmower, have all been converted to run on hydrogen. this technology is real. It's here today. And, I've been doing this since 1996. When I worked for the Department of Transportation, we basically did the first commercial purchase of fuel cells outside the US space program, which were in operation for almost 18 years. That shows you how reliable these things are. So I've been in the business of actually integrating improvements that they've come along. The house here uses geothermal for 22 years to provide the heat and air conditioning powered by fuel cells and renewables. So if you look at the next slide, please. So this is my hydrogen home. To the right, you see the geothermal system. We have no concerns for energy here, consumption, big screen TVs, hot tubs, swimming pools, and I run my entire shop off of this. Now, NREL came up with the vision of a hydrogen home, and you can see it to the right. So you have underground storage tanks, you have electrolyzers, you have solar cells, you have a wind turbine, you have a grid connection. So all of these things I've actually built into this home. So we've been off grid here with a family of 6 for the last 19 years. All right. One of my other concerns is, obviously water. So back in 2010, we came up with a solar hydrogen water purification plant that's portable. It's called the Hydra. And you can see the water coming into the water going out. We're using ultrafiltration, and these were powered by fuel cells that could go from village to village in India. We actually debuted a lot of this equipment in Puerto Rico when they had all of the floods. So water and hydrogen are connected, and both are going to represent the next era of energy. So we've got to start getting our energy from a star rather than from the fossil fuel assets of the Jurassic Age. Next slide, please. Sorry, I covered that one. Next one. Okay. So this is the way we store hydrogen here at the house. We basically take regular old propane tanks. Actually, the ones I've used in the home were from 1971, repurposed them, and they've been in use here for the last 19 years, perfectly suitable for hydrogen. We've built hydrogen heaters, as you can see to the right, where we can actually put a catalyst on the heater. We run the hydrogen past it, it auto ignites, and it provides radiant heat. Storage at the hydrogen house is done in 3 different stages. We have low pressure, which comes out of the electrolyzer. Old electrolyzers were 200 pounds, same as a propane tank. The new ones that are out now are doing about 30 bar, which is about 400 and some pounds. That basically eliminates one stage of the compressor system here. We have medium pressure hydrogen, which is about 2,500. And then we have high pressure hydrogen, which is about 6,000. It's not the full 15 for the vehicle yet, but it's good enough to give me 60% of the range on these vehicles. And as far as I know, I'm the only individual citizen in the world that's actually doing this from renewable. The water that's generated from the cars, can actually be used to drink. I actually tested this out in Malibu to Las Vegas when I drove my Mirai there and back. We actually had brought our own fuel with us on the way back via these storage trailers we make. So right now, the time is right. We can do 94% of all the greenhouse gases, using hydrogen, and we have everything we need. All the knowledge is here. So next slide, please. So something that I've developed about 5 years ago is called the Joule Box. So this is a solar, hydrogen, wind, electrolyzer, power plant all in a box. So we've used a lot of these for the military and for disaster relief and border crossings. But now we're scaling up these systems to be used for all the homes that are never going to get power after the fires in Colorado and California. This particular Joule Box was capable of doing 10 kilowatts worth of power. The new one that we're finishing up now is going to do somewhere around 100 kilowatts, and they'll all be stackable. So this is going to meet the needs of a lot of the homes where the grid is not coming back after taking over 120 years to build. They're not going to do that in 5 years. So this is something that we're going to be approaching the utilities with in the next year, but these can be used for an individual house or they can be used for a community. We're currently building 5 homes right now in Malibu. We're doing a whole street where we're building in one single hydrogen generation station and then pumping it to 5 different homes. So, you know, this is the product that we generate here. Everything here is American made. And we've already done hydrogen homes here in New Jersey. I did one up the road in Pennington, which became the world's first commercially affordable solar hydrogen home in the world. And that's been operating now for 7 years. I also have one in California as well. Next slide. Okay, so electrolyzer technology is the key to a lot of this stuff. We've seen that, you know, fuel cells are currently, lots of different companies are building them, and the costs have come down considerably. And we can, you know, we can thank companies like Proton and Toyota for, you know, putting a huge effort in and bringing these down. The electrolyzers right now, on the other hand, that's a different story. Costs have been coming down significantly. The cost for the one at my home was $125,000. And that was a lot of money back in 2002. Currently, electrolyzer technology we're using is going to do the same thing for about 19,000. So that's a dramatic drop. And like I said, we've seen the same thing with hydrogen fuel cells. We've had a considerable drop. Right now, you know, there are Toyota Mirais out there that are off the grid. You can buy for like $10,000. So I'm in the business of doing integration and building systems. And right now we've seen a lot lower cost than we ever have, which is going to make this a lot more feasible very quick. And like Charlie said, this is going to be a matter of volume in order to get this out there, and demonstration projects. We have to let people know that there's something else on the menu. So, you know, we have everything we need. The time is now, and we need to get this thing going and build it. We're looking at wind projects right now. That's probably going to be the most inexpensive form of hydrogen that's out there. So wind power for storage, I think that's going to bring us down to the 2 kilogram mark and maybe even lower. We're looking at projects in California that, you know, they have more incentives, and we need to do the same thing here. Next slide, please. This was a project that I was involved in California where we're doing agricultural waste. I think this is going to be one of the key components. We're taking, in this particular example, we're taking carrot waste from one of the processing plants, the end tails, and then we're converting it through a process where we're basically using microbes rather than anaerobic digestion. So we're looking at being able to produce hydrogen 12 kilograms per ton in a very short period of time, in like 2 days. We scrub it we go through a CO2 scrubber, and it can be used directly into the fuel cell. You're looking at the byproducts of this thing being liquid fertilizer, which are in turn sold back to the farms for fertilizer, and solid waste, you know, the solid waste going back for fertilizer as well. So there's a 70% profit margin in doing this type of, you know, biologic hydrogen conversion. And there are lots of these waste plants that can all use this type of system. So, you know, the next, you know, everything is, you know, 80% of everything is made out of hydrogen. We should be learning how to convert it the way Mother Nature does in order to, you know, clean the planet in time. It's going to take all different forms in order to get us there quickly.
Exactly.
Next slide. Okay, so some of the things that I want to close out with is, you know, currently all the major automakers have invested in this technology, and, you know, we have that part of the chicken and the egg. You know, 94% of all the greenhouse gases can be mitigated by using this technology worldwide, and we have everything that we need. All the technology exists. and advances over the last 20 years, are all here today. We've had a false start 10 years ago, but it's all here right now. All we need is mass production. Right now, we're behind the 8 ball as far as what other countries are doing. We have to accelerate that pace. California is probably 6 years ahead of us, and Europe's probably a few more ahead of that. So, I'm recommending that, that we put in incentives like we did for solar originally. So where you cover 70% of the hydrogen refueling infrastructure, so we can actually take this seriously and get it out there. Refueling is a real point of contention that needs to happen. Since we're the most densely populated state in the nation, we can basically put a very few stations in, less than a third of what California has, and get twice the coverage. So, since we're close to major metropolises like New York and Philadelphia, this makes a lot of sense. So we need to put the funding into education, demonstration projects, and get these stations out there. So I just want to thank everybody on behalf of the Hydrogen House and the citizens of New Jersey and of Spaceship Earth.
Well, that was
Anybody have
excellent.
any questions? You can go to my website and you can see all the cool stuff we've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, that concludes panel number 3. Thank you for your time. I guess, Joanne, you'll take it home from here.
Yes. Let me ask Carolyn though, did Chuck leave you with any closing comments before I close the meeting?
I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, which is, thanks so much for everybody for joining, and that we'll post the slides and the presentation, if possible, on the website, and I'll send it back over to you. We've got more to come. Joanne, you can do the closing final from here.
All right. Well, first of all, I wanted to ask if there were any remaining questions. We tried to answer the questions in the chat and live, and there were some things we couldn't answer, and we will make sure we get back to those folks who asked those questions. If there are no more questions, I don't see any more. I would personally like to thank Chuck. I'm sorry that he can't be here at the end of this. He's obviously had a rough time the past few days, and it's great that he could join us today. So we really appreciate that. And I've really enjoyed my collaboration with Chuck and New Jersey Clean Cities. So I want to thank New Jersey Clean Cities and the National Renewable Energy Lab for sponsoring this forum. I see it as that Chuck and I have been collaborating on workshops in New Jersey, at least before COVID we were, and doing a lot of education activities. I see this as really jump-starting the discussions around projects that will begin in New Jersey. And I'm really excited about that. And I think there was a lot of great information here to inform the task force. As a matter of fact, several of the task force members are attending this forum, and I've already seen some comments about the presentations and the usefulness for our task force efforts. So, and I just see a couple more comments, questions. How do we engage the full National Hydrogen Coalition is one question. And the second, so if that's the Fuel Cell Hydrogen and Energy Association, we certainly are engaged with them. If you have specific suggestions or ideas, please send them our way. I didn't see them among the attendees, but they were invited, and we are always in discussions with them. Is there a rating for renewable hydrogen, much like biodiesel? Oh, and Bill is answering the question on a rating for renewable hydrogen. And then there's just a comment. Oh, here's another question. Are we able to share best practices and technology worldwide? And Bill may be able to answer that. I know California has shared best practices, and the Center for Hydrogen Safety directed by Nick Barillo, and I think sponsored by the Association for somebody's jumping in here to help me out, maybe. Maybe not. Genevieve's answering that question on best practices in technology worldwide. And then there's a comment here, recycling using renewables. And it's not a question, so I don't know what the question is there. Do any of the panelists have anything remaining to say before we close? Because we are a few minutes early. So I want to give people an opportunity if they want to say anything else.
Yeah, and this is Bill. I would say that it's really encouraging to see the Department of Energy and the federal administration step up on hydrogen. The Earthshot initiative was very encouraging. Sets a national goal for us as a country, and I think a lot of folks are going to start to really get behind this as a result of that. So I'm anxious to see where that takes us. I would say that from the perspective of integrating hydrogen into our economy and developing national plans, we're a bit behind the rest of the world. Europe has been working on this for some time now. They're a bit ahead of us, but there's no reason we can't catch up and pass the rest of the world and share what we learn, right? The US is the center of innovation. We've been the leaders in the world in terms of energy policy for many, many years, and likely we'll take on that role as we go forward. So I'm excited to be part of the mix.
Thank you, Bill. I totally agree. It's exciting times for hydrogen, and there is the International Partnership for Hydrogen in the Economy, where information is shared. That's DOE is an active member in that, as well as other organizations. Caroline, Matt Dawson asked if we can send out the link for where the recording will be. Are you going to send that, email that to attendees?
I think we're probably going to post the presentation on the website, and we'll work on keeping everybody posted on whether we'll also add the presentation, the live recording there as well. We can get that ironed out.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank
Joanne, may I bring something up rather quick? I don't have a whole lot of time, but something really exciting that we're up to.
Sure.
So I've personally been involved along with Chart, and we've had a lot of collaboration with heavy duty truck manufacturers on liquid hydrogen, dispensed liquid hydrogen. We're working on liquid hydrogen tanks. So heavy duty is going to happen really quickly. Some of those truck manufacturers that I can't mention have already taken orders for thousands and thousands of trucks, and liquid hydrogen as a fuel is here. And we're trying to figure out, is it cryocompressed or is it liquid hydrogen? The definition of cryocompressed, for those that don't know, is liquid hydrogen above 300 bar storage. So a lot of excitement going on. Is the busing and medium duty going to go liquid? Are they going to stay high pressure gas? Things like that as an industry. But I got to tell you, heavy duty is moving really fast with liquid because of the range requirements. And a lot of companies have had a lot of interesting postings, which, I encourage everyone to see. But heavy duty's driving the whole market, and we're excited to be part of it.
Thanks, Roy. That's good to hear. I'm also a big fan of fuel cell buses. California and Ohio have deployed fuel cell bus fleets, and I think they can work very well in New Jersey. So I certainly would like to see that happen. Brad is asking about the role of ammonia as a more cost-effective means of storing hydrogen. Roy or Genevieve, do you want to, or anybody else, say something about that? Genevieve?
I'm going to defer that one, Joanne.
Okay. Genevieve is typing an answer. So as we close, I want to thank all the panelists and the moderators, and I especially want to thank Caroline and Nick for handling all the logistics and making all this happen, and all the technical difficulties, last minute technical difficulties. Really appreciate it. And Nick for managing the slides so with that, I think we're going to end some 20 minutes early. But Genevieve is still typing her answer, so maybe we should, it seems to be done. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We're going to end with that, and enjoy the rest of the week. Stay cool. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.